8 years of silence, one drawing at school, and a sister's arrival with the law changed everything. Stay with me. The moment the patrol cars turn onto the dirt road will raise your heartbeat. The sound of the slap echoed through the small kitchen of the farmhouse. Rosa felt the sting on her cheek as she tried not to shed the tears that threatened to fall. It was barely 5 a.m., and she was already receiving the first blow of the day. "I told you I wanted scrambled eggs, not fried. You can't do anything right." Carlos, her husband, looked at her with contempt as he threw the plate on the floor. "Clean it up and do it again. I don't have all day." Rosa, her hands trembling, began to pick up the pieces of ceramic scattered across the dirt floor. The El Recuerdo farm on the outskirts of San Antonio, Yucatan, was a beautiful place for any visitor, but for her it had become a prison 8 years ago when she married Carlos Mendoza. "Hurry up, woman. Can't you see the children need to eat breakfast before they go to school?" The voice of Doña Lourdes, her mother-in-law, always sounded like a whip ready to punish. "If you were a good mother, you would have everything ready by now. That's why my son is in a bad mood." Rosa bit her lip as she nodded silently. Since she came to live with the Mendoza family, she had learned that her voice had no value. Her opinions were ignored, her complaints punished, and her desires forgotten. "Mom, why are you crying?" asked Juanito, her 8-year-old son, standing in the kitchen doorway in his wrinkled school uniform. "I'm not crying, sweetheart. It's the smoke from the stove." Rosa forced a smile as she prepared breakfast again. "Go wake up your little sister, please. Everything is almost ready." Juanito nodded, but his gaze lingered on the pieces of plate his mother was still picking up. He wasn't stupid. He knew what was going on at home. He had seen too many times how his father pushed his mother against the walls, how his grandmother yelled horrible things at her, and how his grandfather Vicente simply looked the other way, pretending nothing was happening. "Men don't cry, Juanito, and women must learn their place." That's what his grandmother always said when he tried to defend his mother. "Your mother is useless and doesn't know how to appreciate everything we do for her." Rosa finished serving breakfast just as Carlos returned to the kitchen. She placed the plate in front of him, holding her breath, waiting for his approval. The man took a bite and continued eating in silence. At least this time she had done it right. "I'm going to the country. When I come back, I want the house clean and the food ready," Carlos ordered, getting up from the table. "And don't you dare call anyone again with the house phone. You know what happened last time." Rosa nodded as a chill ran down her spine. The last time she tried to call her family, Carlos had locked her in the shed for 2 days without food. She hadn't tried again since. After everyone had breakfast, Rosa took the children to the entrance of the farm where the school bus passed. It was one of the few moments of the day when she could breathe fresh air beyond the confines of the house. "Behave yourselves, my darlings," she said, kissing their foreheads. "Remember that I love you very much." "When are we going to leave here, Mom?" asked Lupita, her 6-year-old daughter, with an innocence that broke her heart. "Someday, sweetheart, someday." Rosa forced another smile as she watched the bus approach. What Rosa didn't know was that someday was closer than she imagined. Because that morning at Benito Juarez Elementary School, teacher Gabriela had noticed something strange in one of Juanito's drawings. A woman lying on the ground, while a large man pointed at her with a threatening finger. And when she asked him who they were, the boy replied naturally, "They're my dad and my mom. He's scolding her because she didn't make the food right. He always says she deserves it." Teacher Gabriela clutched the drawing in her hands. She had to do something. Soon the bruise on Rosa's arm began to turn yellowish-green as she scrubbed hard at the mud stains on the hallway floor. The midday sun in San Antonio beat down relentlessly on the courtyard, but Doña Lourdes had insisted that she clean the entire entrance before preparing lunch. "Aren't you done yet? For God's sake, you're slower than a turtle." Her mother-in-law's voice startled her. "My Carlos works all day under the sun to maintain this house, and you can't even keep everything clean." Rosa bowed her head as she continued scrubbing. 8 years ago, when she met Carlos at that party in San Marcos, she never imagined it would end like this. He had been so different then, attentive, affectionate, promising her a happy life on the beautiful family estate. The Mendoza men need strong, hard-working women, not delicate little princesses. Doña Lourdes continued as she inspected every corner. "My son was too good to marry you. With no dowry or property, the least you can do is be useful. Don Vicente passed by on his way to the barn, saw his wife scolding Rosa, and simply continued on his way. He never intervened, never defended her. For him, women's affairs were women's business, and if his son treated his wife that way, he must have his reasons. When she finally finished with the floor, Rosa ran to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Her hands worked mechanically while her mind wandered, remembering her family in El Paso, wondering what had become of her sister Leticia, who wanted to be a lawyer. It had been so long since she had heard from them. Carlos had torn up all her letters at first, and then made sure she couldn't send or receive any more. "Mom, we're home." The voices of Juanito and Lupita pulled her out of her thoughts. At least they were her reason for living, although lately she was worried that Juanito was starting to talk like his father. "How was school, my darlings?" she asked as she served the noodle soup. "Fine. Teacher Gabriela asked me to stay after class," Juanito said as he sat down. "She asked me a lot of questions about Mom and Dad." Rosa felt the blood drain from her face. "What kind of questions?" "She wanted to know if Dad yells at you a lot. And I said yes, but that's because you don't do things right," the boy replied casually, as if he were talking about the weather. "Like Grandma says, women need to learn their place." Rosa looked at her son in horror, not only because of what he had said, but because it was exactly what Carlos would say. The cycle of violence was already taking root in her little boy. "Look, Mom, I made a new drawing," Lupita interrupted, pulling a crumpled piece of paper out of her backpack. It was a drawing of a woman lying on the floor while her name, written in large letters, pointed at her. Rosa couldn't hold back her tears this time. What had her life become? What were her children becoming? The sound of Carlos's truck interrupted the moment. Rosa quickly wiped her tears and hurried to serve the plates. "What's wrong with you?" Carlos asked when he came in and saw her red eyes. "Were you crying again? For God's sake, woman, what more do you want? You have a roof over your head, food to eat. You have everything you need." "It's nothing, Carlos. It's just the dust from the yard." Rosa lied as she served him. Carlos grabbed her arm roughly, right where she had the bruise, and squeezed hard. "I know you. You're hiding something. Who did you talk to today? Who came?" "No one, I swear," she replied, stifling a cry of pain. "You better not, because you know what will happen if I find out you're looking for help. No one will believe you. Everyone knows you're crazy, that I took you in from nowhere." Rosa nodded silently. She had heard those threats so many times that they were now part of her daily life, like breathing or sleeping. That night, while the children slept and Carlos snored beside her, Rosa dared to look out the window at the moon. At that moment, miles away, in a law office in the city of San Antonio, a woman named Leticia Ramirez was reviewing a list of names of students at the Benito Juarez Elementary School. Her friend Gabriela had called her, concerned about a boy named Juan Mendoza Ramirez. "Ramirez," Leticia murmured, as a chill ran down her spine. The same maiden name as hers, the same last name as her sister Rosa, with whom she had lost contact 8 years ago after she married a man named Carlos Mendoza and moved to a farm on the outskirts of the city. "It can't be a coincidence," she thought, as she searched for an old photograph in her drawer. In it, 2 young women smiled as they hugged each other. It was her and Rosa before everything changed. The classroom was empty except for the teacher Gabriela and Juanito, who was quietly coloring while she pretended to review some papers. She had been watching him closely for a week, noting every worrying comment, every disturbing drawing, every phrase that should not come out of the mouth of an 8-year-old. "Juanito, do you like living at home?" the teacher asked in a soft voice, trying not to alarm him. The boy shrugged without looking up from his drawing. "Sometimes when Dad doesn't yell too much and Mom doesn't cry, and your mom cries a lot, almost every day." Juanito drew a red line on the paper, but Grandma says it's because she's weak, that strong women don't cry. Gabriela squeezed her pencil so hard she almost broke it. "And your mom can go out to visit friends or family." Juanito shook his head. "Dad says Mom doesn't have any friends because she's crazy, and that her family doesn't love her because she's useless." He looked up innocently. "But I love her, even though she can't cook well, like Grandma says." The teacher held back the tears that threatened to fall. Every word the boy said confirmed her suspicions. Rosa Ramirez, Juanito's mother, was trapped in a cycle of domestic violence from which she could not escape on her own. "Juanito, do you know if your mom has any brothers or sisters?" she asked, remembering the information Leticia needed. "I think so. I once heard Dad yell at her that her sister was stuck up for studying to be a lawyer." The boy became thoughtful. "Why do you know my aunt?" "No, sweetheart, I was just asking." Gabriela smiled at him as she put away her notebook. "You can go now. Your mom must be waiting for you." As soon as the boy left, Gabriela picked up her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Leticia, it's me. I have all the information you needed. There's no doubt about it. It's Rosa, your sister." On the other end of the line, Leticia Ramirez held her breath. After 8 years of fruitless searching, she finally had a concrete clue about her younger sister's whereabouts. Her initial suspicions upon hearing the surname Ramirez were now confirmed. "Are you sure?" Her voice trembled with a mixture of hope and fear. The boy mentioned that his mother has a sister who studied to be a lawyer and that her sister is Leticia. From what the boy says, the situation is serious. Very serious. Leticia closed her eyes, remembering the last time she saw Rosa. It had been at her wedding to Carlos Mendoza, a seemingly charming man who had courted her sister for barely 6 months before proposing marriage. Rosa was in love, dazzled by his promises of a happy life on the family farm outside San Antonio. "They practically took her away by force," Leticia murmured, remembering how Rosa's calls gradually became less frequent until they stopped altogether. "The few times we tried to visit her, there was always an excuse, that she was sick, that they had gone on a trip." According to her school records, they live on the El Recuerdo estate, about 20 kilometers from the city on the road to Motul, Gabriela reported. "But Leticia, you have to be careful. According to Juanito, her father is a violent and controlling man, and her mother-in-law seems to be just as abusive. I've dealt with cases like this before," Leticia replied with determination. Her specialty as a lawyer was precisely domestic violence, although she never imagined she would have to apply her knowledge to rescue her own sister. "I need solid evidence before I can intervene legally." "What are you going to do?" "What any sister would do, visit her. After 8 years, it's time for a family reunion." Meanwhile, at the El Recuerdo farm, Rosa welcomed her children with open arms. Every day she feared that they would say something at school, that someone would notice the bruises that sometimes showed under the sleeves of her dress, that someone would hear the screams that pierced the adobe walls of the main house. "How was your day?" she asked as she served the fresh lemonade she had prepared. "Fine," replied Juanito, avoiding her gaze. He didn't want to tell her that the teacher had asked him questions about her. His father had warned him many times that family problems stayed at home. "The teacher talked to us about children's rights," Lupita said innocently. "She said that no one should hit children or their mothers." Rosa turned pale. "That's right. That's true, my love. No one should hurt anyone, but Dad pushes you sometimes." Lupita observed with the devastating honesty of a 6-year-old. "And Grandma says you deserve it." Rosa didn't know how to respond. How could she explain to a little girl the complex web of fear, economic dependence, and isolation in which she was trapped? How could she make her understand that every day she dreamed of escaping but had nowhere to go, no money, and no strength? Sometimes adults make mistakes. That was all she could think to say. "Now finish your snack because you have to do your homework before your father gets home." That night, while Rosa was washing the dishes after dinner, Carlos came into the kitchen with a piece of paper in his hand. His expression was grim. "Can you explain what this means?" He showed her a letter from the bank. "Why does the bank say we took out a loan for 50,000 pesos last month? I didn't sign anything." Rosa looked at the paper, confused. "I didn't sign anything either, Carlos. I swear. Don't lie to me." His voice became threatening as he approached her. "You're the only one who has access to the papers. What did you do with that money? Are you hiding it so you can run away?" "No! I swear I don't know anything about this." Rosa backed up until she hit the wall. "I would never do something like that. You know that." Carlos grabbed her by the neck and squeezed lightly, just enough to scare her. "You better tell me the truth, because if I find out you're cheating on me, I won't." Rosa could barely speak. What neither of them knew was that Doña Lourdes and Don Vicente had forged Rosa's signature to apply for that loan, using her name to cover the debts the old man had accumulated with a local moneylender. It was the third time they had done this, taking advantage of the fact that Rosa never checked the mail and that Carlos trusted his parents blindly. Meanwhile, miles away, Leticia Ramirez was preparing a folder with legal documents, a request for protective measures, forms for reporting domestic violence, and contacts for shelters for abused women. On her desk lay a small family photo album and an unshakable decision. The following Sunday, after 8 years of forced silence, she would visit her sister Rosa at the El Recuerdo farm. What she did not imagine was that this visit would forever change the fate of the entire Mendoza Ramirez family. The Benito Juarez Elementary School was bustling with activity when Leticia Ramirez parked her car at the entrance. She was dressed formally but discreetly, like any mother attending a school meeting. In reality, she had come to meet with Gabriela to finalize details before her visit to the El Recuerdo farm. The children say they have never seen anyone from Rosa's family visit them, Gabriela explained, as they walked through the empty hallways. Carlos keeps the whole family completely isolated. Rosa has no phone, cannot go out alone, and according to Juanito, she is not even allowed to talk to the women who sell at the market when they go to town. Leticia clenched her fists, holding back her anger. A classic case of isolation. First they physically distance her, then they separate her from any support network, and finally they make her believe that no one misses her, that no one is looking for her. Exactly. And the children, Gabriela lowered her voice. Juanito is already adopting sexist attitudes. Yesterday he told a classmate that girls must obey because they are more stupid. We are trying to correct him, but what he learns at home has a lot of influence. Have you seen any physical signs of abuse in the children? No. It seems that the physical violence is only against Rosa, but the emotional and psychological abuse affects everyone in that house. Gabriela took an envelope out of her bag. Here are the drawings I mentioned. They all show scenes of domestic violence depicted with the brutal clarity that only a child can have. Leticia looked at the drawings with a lump in her throat. In one of them, a female figure was drawn with blue tears cascading down her face, while a much larger male figure loomed over her with a disproportionately large red fist. This one is from Lupita, Gabriela explained. She drew her father with giant fists because, according to her dad's hands become enormous when he is angry. Leticia carefully put the drawings away. They would be crucial evidence if she needed to go to the authorities. When are you planning to go? Gabriela asked. This Sunday I'll tell them I was passing through the area and decided to visit my sister. I'll be diplomatic. I don't want to alert them. First I need to see Rosa, assess her physical and psychological state, and above all, show her that she is not alone. What Leticia didn't know was that while they were talking at the farm, a crisis was brewing. Carlos had discovered among Juanito's things one of the drawings the teacher had asked him to do, which clearly showed him yelling at Rosa. "What the hell is this?" he roared, throwing the crumpled paper in front of Rosa. "You're telling the teacher about our problems. Are you sending messages with the children?" "No, Carlos, I'm not." Rosa was shaking uncontrollably. "It's just a child's drawing. They draw what they see at home." The slap came so fast that she couldn't dodge it. The impact made her stagger and fall onto the kitchen table. "You're ruining my reputation. What are people going to think? That I'm an abuser? A bad man?" Carlos kicked a chair, sending it flying against the wall. "All I've done is give you a roof over your head and food to eat. I took you in when no one else wanted you." Doña Lourdes, drawn by the shouting, entered the kitchen. Instead of intervening, she crossed her arms and watched the scene with a look of approval. "I told you, son. This woman has always been ungrateful. I'm sure she's filling the children's heads with lies about us." Rosa, still on the floor, shook her head as tears ran down her cheeks. "I would never do that. I swear. The children just draw what they see. See? She even admits it." Doña Lourdes approached menacingly. "She's saying you're a bad father, a bad husband." Carlos grabbed Rosa by the hair and forced her to stand up. "Listen to me carefully. If I find out you've been talking badly about me or my family, I swear to God." "What's going on here?" Don Vicente's voice interrupted the scene. Unlike other occasions, this time he didn't seem willing to ignore the situation. This woman is teaching the children to draw pictures showing me as a monster, Carlos explained without letting go of Rosa. Don Vicente looked at the child's drawing and then looked at his son, who was still holding Rosa tightly, and his wife, who was fanning the flames with her poisonous comments. For the first time in years, he seemed to really see what was happening in his home. "Let her go, Carlos," he ordered in a firm voice. "But Dad, I said let her go. That's enough." Don Vicente's tone brooked no reply. Carlos released Rosa, who immediately trembled away to the corner of the kitchen. "Vicente, don't get involved in this," Doña Lourdes intervened. "He has to keep order in his house." "Order? You call this order, Lourdes?" Don Vicente looked around at the broken chair, the crumpled drawing, the terrified woman in the corner. "What has happened to us? This is not the family I wanted to build." It was a brief moment of lucidity, a fleeting instant of humanity amid years of silent complicity, but it did not last long. Doña Lourdes took her husband by the arm and led him out of the kitchen, whispering in his ear not to get involved in matters he didn't understand. Rosa was left alone again, picking up the pieces of the broken chair, wiping away her tears, and mentally preparing for the arrival of the children who would soon return from school. She had to smile, pretend that everything was fine, and carry on as usual. What she didn't know was that the following Sunday, after 8 years of silence, an unknown car would stop in front of the El Recuerdo farm, and that the woman who would get out of it was not only her sister Leticia, but also her only hope of escaping the hell she was living in. Meanwhile, in her office in San Antonio, Leticia was signing the last legal documents. She didn't know exactly what she would encounter on Sunday, but she was prepared for the worst and willing to do whatever it took to rescue her sister. Sunday dawned with clear skies over the El Recuerdo estate. Rosa got up as usual before dawn to prepare Sunday breakfast, the only day when the whole family ate together. Her movements were methodical, automated by years of routine and fear. The incident with the drawing was behind her, at least on the surface, although Carlos continued to watch her with more suspicion than ever. "What are you preparing?" asked Doña Lourdes, entering the kitchen with her usual expression of disgust. "Green chilaquiles, rice, and refried beans," replied Rosa, without looking up from the stove. Carlos likes red ones, not green ones, but I suppose it's too much to ask you to remember something so simple after 8 years." The older woman checked the pots with a critical eye. "And that rice looks too watery." Rosa didn't respond. She had learned that any attempt to defend herself only made things worse. She continued cooking in silence while Doña Lourdes criticized every detail, from the way she had cut the tortillas to the excess cilantro in the sauce. The children ran into the kitchen, drawn by the aroma of breakfast. It was Sunday, the only day they were allowed to eat sweets after lunch, and they were excited. "Good morning, Mom," Lupita exclaimed, hugging Rosa around the waist. "Good morning, my love." Rosa smiled genuinely for the first time that day, stroking her daughter's hair. "Are we going to town today, Dad?" Juanito asked Carlos, who had just entered the kitchen with the newspaper in his hand. "I don't know. It depends on how your mother behaves." Carlos stared at Rosa, silently reminding her of the drawing incident. The morning passed with the usual tension hanging in the air. After breakfast, Carlos and Don Vicente went out to check on the crops, while Doña Lourdes settled into the living room to watch her Sunday television programs. Rosa took the opportunity to do the week's laundry with Lupita helping her with the sheets, and Juanito playing nearby. That was when they heard the sound of an unfamiliar car approaching on the dirt road that led to the main house. Strange vehicles were rare on the farm, and Rosa felt a chill. "Who could it be?" she murmured, more to herself than to the children. From the porch, she saw a silver compact car pull up. An elegant woman, dressed in beige pants and a white blouse, got out of the vehicle. When the woman took off her sunglasses, Rosa felt the world stop around her. Leticia whispered, feeling her legs give way. Her older sister, whom she hadn't seen in 8 years, was standing there in front of the house, looking at her with a mixture of relief and horror that Rosa didn't understand until she remembered her own reflection in the mirror that morning. Emaciated, thinner than healthy, with deep dark circles under her eyes, and a dull look that no longer resembled the lively young woman she had once been. "Rosa." Letitia advanced with determined steps. "It's been so long since I've seen you, sister." Rosa couldn't move. Was it real? Had her sister come to find her after so many years? Or was it a cruel dream from which she would wake up to find herself even more alone than before? "Who are you?" Doña Lourdes's voice cut through the air as she stepped out onto the porch, alarmed by the presence of a stranger. "I'm Leticia Ramirez, Rosa's sister." Leticia extended her hand with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I was passing through the area and thought I'd visit my sister. It's been a long time." Doña Lourdes looked at the outstretched hand without taking it. How strange. Rosa never mentioned that she had family who cared about her. "That is strange," Leticia replied without losing her composure, "because our family has always cared about her. In fact, we have tried to contact her many times over the years." A tense silence filled the porch. Rosa, paralyzed between two worlds, the hell she had lived through and the hope that had just arrived, did not know what to do or say. "Mom, who is that lady?" Juanito and Lupita approached curiously. Leticia smiled when she saw them. "You must be Juanito and Lupita. I'm your Aunt Leticia, your mother's sister." "We have an aunt?" Lupita asked, her eyes wide. "Of course you do. You have uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, a whole family that has wanted to meet you for a long time." Doña Lourdes narrowed her eyes. "Carlos isn't home right now, and I don't think he'll like this surprise visit." "Oh, don't worry. I just came to say hello to my sister and meet my nephews." Leticia kept her diplomatic smile. "If it's not too much trouble, I'd love to have coffee with Rosa and catch up." Before Doña Lourdes could respond, Carlos and Don Vicente appeared on the road, alerted by the unfamiliar car. "What's going on here?" Carlos frowned when he saw the stranger. "Carlos, this is Leticia, my sister," Rosa explained, finally finding her voice, though it was trembling. "Your sister, the lawyer." Carlos looked Leticia up and down with obvious suspicion. "What are you doing here after so many years?" "As I was explaining to your mother, I was passing through the area and wanted to visit Rosa." "It's been a long time." Leticia extended her hand. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Carlos." He shook her hand briefly, assessing the situation. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Why don't we all go inside?" Don Vicente suggested, surprising everyone. "It's hot out here, and I'm sure Rosa's sister has traveled a long way to get here." Reluctantly, Carlos nodded, and they all entered the house. Rosa mechanically prepared coffee, feeling her husband's piercing gaze on her, as if he were silently accusing her of having planned this meeting. "So, Leticia, what do you do now?" Don Vicente asked, trying to lighten the mood. "I'm a lawyer specializing in family law," she replied. "I mainly work with cases of domestic violence, divorce, and custody." Rosa almost dropped the cup she was holding. Why had Leticia said that? She was trying to provoke Carlos. Interesting specialty," Carlos commented with a tense smile. "Ah, I suppose you see a lot of cases of women trying to take everything away from their husbands." "Actually, I see a lot of cases of women trying to survive," Leticia replied, holding Carlos's gaze without hesitation. "Women who have lost their voice, their freedom, and their dignity. Women who deserve a second chance." The silence that followed was suffocating. Carlos was squeezing his cup so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "Aunt Leticia, do you want to see my drawings?" Lupita interjected, oblivious to the tension between the adults. "I'd love to, sweetheart." Leticia smiled genuinely for the first time since her arrival. As Lupita ran to fetch her drawings, Leticia noticed something that made her blood run cold, a yellowish bruise on Rosa's wrist, visible when she poured more coffee. Their eyes met briefly, and Leticia saw in her sister's eyes a silent plea for help that confirmed everything she feared. "How long do you plan to stay in the area?" Carlos asked, interrupting the moment. "I'm not sure," Leticia replied calmly. "I have some unfinished business in San Antonio. Maybe I could take Rosa and the children out for a walk one of these days, so they can meet their family." "That won't be possible." Doña Lourdes intervened. "Rosa has many responsibilities here, and the children have school." "I understand. Maybe next weekend, then." Leticia was not willing to give up so easily. Rosa watched the exchange with a mixture of hope and terror. Could Leticia really help her escape? Or would her visit only make things worse when she left? When Lupita returned with her drawings, Letitia looked at them carefully, noticing the same patterns of violence she had seen in the ones Gabriela showed her. Carlos and Doña Lourdes exchanged nervous glances. "They're very nice, Lupita," Letitia said, pausing on one in particular. "A house with sad figures and a woman crying. Who are they?" "It's us," the girl replied, naturally. "Mom is sad because Dad yelled at her." The silence that followed was deafening. Letitia carefully put the drawing in her bag. "I think it's time for you to go," Carlos said, standing up. "You've seen that Rosa is fine, that she has everything she needs here." Letitia nodded, realizing that she had achieved her main goal, to confirm the situation and let Rosa know that she was not alone. "Of course, it has been a pleasure to finally meet my nephews." She approached Rosa and hugged her tightly. "I'll be back soon, sister. I promise," she whispered in her ear. As she drove away in her car, Letitia looked in the rearview mirror at the image of Rosa on the porch with Carlos holding her tightly by the arm. It wasn't goodbye, but the beginning of a rescue, and now she had all the evidence she needed to set her plan in motion. As soon as Letitia's car disappeared down the road, Carlos let go of Rosa with a push that almost made her fall. "Did you plan this? Did you ask her to come?" His voice sounded dangerously low, restrained. "No, I swear I didn't know anything." Rosa backed up until she hit the porch wall. "I haven't spoken to my family in years, you know that." Doña Lourdes watched the scene with her arms crossed, a malicious smile on her lips. She must have sent a message with the children. Don't you see how it all fits together? The drawings, the teacher asking questions, and now the lawyer's sister appearing out of nowhere. Carlos looked at the children watching fearfully from the doorway. "Juanito, come here. Did your mom ask you to tell the teacher something? Did she tell you to make those drawings?" "No, Dad," the boy replied, trembling. "I just drew what I see at home." A deathly silence fell over the porch. Juanito's innocent answer was the harshest confirmation of the reality they were living. "I think we all need to calm down," Don Vicente intervened, placing himself between Carlos and Rosa. "This woman's visit means nothing. She came, she left, and everything remains the same." But everyone knew that nothing would remain the same. Letitia's appearance had upset the fragile balance of power on the farm, for good. "Rosa, go and prepare lunch," Carlos ordered, containing his anger. "We'll talk about this later." While Rosa went to the kitchen, followed by the children, Carlos joined his parents in the living room. The atmosphere was tense, charged with unspoken recriminations. "Did you see how she looked at the drawings? How she put them in her bag?" Doña Lourdes did not hide her concern. "That woman is gathering evidence. As a domestic violence lawyer, she knows exactly what she's doing." "No one is going to take the children away from us," Carlos said through clenched teeth. "This is our family, our home. There's something else we need to discuss." Don Vicente intervened in a serious voice. "The loans." Carlos looked at his father in confusion. "What loans? The ones we took out using Rosa's name?" Don Vicente avoided his son's gaze. "There are 3 so far. The last one was last month." "What?" Carlos couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They forged Rosa's signature." "Why?" "Your father has gambling debts," Doña Lourdes confessed with contempt. "He bet the money from the harvest and lost. We needed to pay before they came looking for us." Carlos ran both hands over his face, processing the revelation. "You're telling me that I accused Rosa of something you did, that she—" He couldn't finish the sentence, remembering how he had hit her that night, accusing her of stealing the money. "It was necessary," Doña Lourdes justified without a hint of remorse. "Anyway, she's good for nothing but housework. At least her name was useful for something." In the kitchen, Rosa prepared the meal with mechanical movements, trying to process everything that had happened. Letitia's visit had brought a ray of hope into her life, but she also feared the consequences when she was left alone with Carlos. "Mom, are we going to see Aunt Letitia again?" asked Lupita, helping her peel potatoes. "I don't know, sweetheart," Rosa replied sincerely. "That depends on many things." "I want to see her," confessed Juanito, surprising Rosa. "She doesn't yell like Dad or say ugly things like Grandma." Rosa hugged her children, holding back tears. They deserved a better life. far from that toxic environment. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, a life where she wasn't afraid, where she could raise her children in peace. What Rosa didn't know was that that moment was closer than she imagined. At that very moment, Letitia Ramirez entered the police station in Motul, the town closest to the farm, with a complete file under her arm, drawings by the children, written testimony from their teacher Gabriela, photographs she had secretly taken of the bruise on Rosa's wrist, and the loan documents she had located at the bank thanks to her legal connections. "I need to file a report for domestic violence," she explained to the officer in charge. "And I have reason to believe that there is also a case of financial fraud involved." Meanwhile, at the farm, the argument between Carlos and his parents had escalated. For the first time, Carlos clearly saw the role his parents had played in the destruction of his marriage. "You always treated her like trash," he accused his mother. "From day one, you never gave her a chance because she didn't deserve it," snapped Doña Lourdes. "She was a nobody from El Paso, with no education, no dowry, nothing to offer us. You deserved better, but you let yourself be fooled by a pretty face. And you, Dad." Carlos turned to Don Vicente, who was always looking the other way. "You never said anything. You never intervened. And now I find out that you've been gambling away our money and putting us all in debt." Don Vicente bowed his head, unable to defend the indefensible. "Do you realize what you've done?" Carlos continued pacing around the room. "Rosa's sister is a domestic violence lawyer. She saw the bruise on her wrist. She saw the children's drawings. If she decides to report us, they could take my children away. I could go to jail. No one will believe you, son." Doña Lourdes tried to calm him down. "You're a respectable man, a landowner. She's a nobody. Don't you understand that the world has changed, Mom? It's not like when you were young. Now there are laws that protect women. There are shelters. There are lawyers like Letitia." Carlos stopped mid-sentence, suddenly realizing the gravity of his situation. For years, he had taken out his frustrations on Rosa, convinced by his parents that he had that right, that she should be grateful for what he gave her. But now, seeing the consequences of his actions reflected in the frightened eyes of his children, in the drawings that revealed a truth he could no longer deny, Carlos felt something new and unfamiliar: shame. At that moment, Don Vicente struggled to his feet and walked to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 police patrol cars were approaching the farm on the dirt road. Carlos called to his son in a trembling voice, "I think we have visitors." Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Rosa also heard the sound of engines approaching. Her heart skipped a beat when she looked out the window and saw Letitia getting out of the first patrol car. "Children," she said with a calmness she didn't know she possessed, "go to your room and get your school backpacks. Put your favorite clothes and toys in them." "Are we going somewhere, Mom?" Lupita asked, confused. Rosa looked at her children with determination. "Yes, my love. I think we're finally going to be free." Dust rose in small golden clouds as the 3 patrol cars parked in front of the main house of the El Recuerdo farm. The afternoon sun illuminated the scene, as if it were the setting for a dramatic play about to reach its climax. Letitia got out of the first vehicle, accompanied by a female officer, while 4 more police officers and a social worker got out of the others. Rosa, her heart pounding in her chest, took her children by the hand and led them to the porch. Her legs were shaking, but her determination was stronger than ever. For the first time in 8 years, a spark of hope shone in her eyes. "What does this mean?" Carlos stormed out of the house, followed by his parents. "What right do you have to come onto my property uninvited? We have a court order, Mr. Mendoza." The officer held out an official document. "We are here to investigate allegations of domestic violence and possible financial fraud." Carlos turned pale as he read the document. His eyes darted frantically across the paper, pausing at phrases such as precautionary measures, child protection, and evidence of physical and psychological abuse. "This is a mistake," he stammered, looking at Letitia with rage. "She's lying. Rosa, tell them she's lying." All eyes turned to Rosa, who stood upright on the porch with her children clinging to her skirts, like little castaways still clinging to a lifeline. "No, I'm not going to lie anymore," she replied in a clear voice that surprised even herself. "Not after 8 years of beatings, humiliation, and threats. Not after seeing my children learn to live in fear in their own home. "Ungrateful!" shouted Doña Lourdes, advancing menacingly toward Rosa. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." One of the officers stepped in, blocking her advance. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down. This situation is already complicated enough." The social worker approached the children, crouching down to their level. "Hi, I'm Miguel. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Can you come with me for a moment while the adults talk?" Juanito looked at his mother for approval. Rosa nodded gently. "It's okay, my loves. Go with Mr. Miguel. Everything will be fine now." As the children walked away with the social worker toward a shaded area of the garden, the officers began to explain the procedure. Letitia's complaint had triggered an immediate protection protocol backed by the evidence gathered, the children's drawings, the teacher's testimony, and the documentation of the financial fraud discovered at the bank. "We also have this," Letitia added, pulling some photographs out of her bag. "Pictures of the bruise on my sister's wrist taken today during my visit." Carlos looked around like a cornered animal. His world, built on absolute control and impunity, was crumbling before his eyes. "Rosa," he pleaded, suddenly changing his tone, "think of our children. Do you really want to separate them from their father? From their home?" "I'm not separating them from their home," Rosa replied firmly. "I'm saving them from becoming what you are, or what I have been, a silent victim." Don Vicente, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. His slumped shoulders and defeated gaze revealed a man finally facing the consequences of his actions. "Officers," he said in a broken voice, "I want to confess something." Ignoring his wife's muffled cries, he continued, "It was me who forged Rosa's signature to obtain loans from the bank. My son knew nothing about this." Doña Lourdes collapsed into a chair on the porch, overcome by her husband's betrayal. "Shut up, you old fool. Can't you see you're making everything worse?" "No, lords, what makes everything worse is continuing to lie." Don Vicente looked at Rosa for the first time with something resembling remorse. "I didn't intervene when I should have. I saw how they treated this woman, and I did nothing. That will be my greatest regret." While the officers took note of the confession, Letitia approached her sister and hugged her tightly. Rosa finally allowed herself to release the tears she had held back for so many years. "We're going to get you out of here today," Letitia whispered. "I have everything ready. A safe place, psychological care for you and the children, and all the legal support you need." Rosa nodded silently, overwhelmed by the conflicting emotions that flooded her. Fear of the unknown, guilt for destroying her family, but above all, an immense relief that flowed through her body like a warm current, washing away years of pain and resignation. The officers explained the procedure. Carlos had to temporarily leave the property while the allegations were investigated. Rosa and the children would be taken to a safe place with a protective order that would prevent Carlos or his parents from approaching them. "You can't do this," cried Doña Lourdes as she watched her perfect family facade shatter. "This house is ours. She's nobody." "You're wrong, ma'am," replied the officer. "Your daughter-in-law is a human being with rights, not property you can mistreat at will." Carlos, realizing he had lost control of the situation, made one last desperate attempt to reach out to Rosa. "Please," he pleaded, in a voice she had never heard before. "Give me another chance. I can change. I swear for the children." Rosa looked him in the eyes, those same eyes that had so often looked at her with contempt and anger. For a moment, she saw in them the man she had fallen in love with before the mask fell and revealed the monster that lived behind it. 8 years of opportunities were enough, Carlos responded with quiet sadness. "If you really want to change, do it for yourself first. Our children deserve a father who respects them, not one who teaches them to hate." The social worker returned with Juanito and Lupita, who ran to their mother when they saw her, shocked. "Are we leaving, Mom?" asked Juanito, his big eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and hope. "Yes, my love. We're going to go with Aunt Letitia for a while." Lupita's trembling voice broke the hearts of everyone present. Rosa knelt in front of her children, looking them straight in the eyes with an honesty she had never before allowed herself to show them. "Dad needs time to learn not to hurt the people he loves. and we need time to heal. Someday, when we're all better, we'll see what happens." The children nodded with the instinctive wisdom that children who have lived in broken homes possess. "Can we take Manchas?" Lupita asked, referring to the little cat they had adopted weeks earlier. "Of course," Letitia replied, smiling at her niece. "Manchas also deserves a happy home." While the officers helped Rosa and the children gather their essential belongings, Carlos was escorted to one of the patrol cars to be taken in for questioning. Doña Lourdes locked herself in her room, refusing to witness what she considered the destruction of her family. Don Vicente, on the other hand, approached Rosa as she walked by with a small suitcase in her hand. "I'm sorry," the old man murmured with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Rosa." She looked at him for a long moment, without hatred, but also without forgiveness. "Sometimes, Don Vicente, I'm sorry isn't enough, but it's a start." When they finally got into the patrol car that would take them to the city, Rosa took one last look at the El Recuerdo farm. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Yucatecan sky orange and purple, as if nature itself were celebrating her liberation. "Are you okay?" Letitia asked, squeezing her hand. Rosa took a deep breath of the fresh air coming in through the vehicle's window. For the first time in 8 years, she felt she could fill her lungs completely, that she could exist without asking permission, that she could dream without fear of being punished for it. "No," she replied sincerely, "but I will be." 6 months later, in a small apartment in downtown San Antonio, Rosa was finishing decorating a homemade cake. The kitchen was filled with laughter and music as Juanito and Lupita played with their cousins, Leticia's children, whom they had just met after years of forced separation. The legal process was still ongoing. Carlos was facing charges of domestic violence, although he had begun attending therapy and anger management programs as part of an agreement with the prosecution. Don Vicente had confessed to financial fraud, taking full responsibility to protect his son, and was paying with community service due to his advanced age. Doña Lourdes, unable to accept her role in the family tragedy, had moved in with a sister in Phoenix, refusing to speak to anyone involved in the case. Rosa had begun studying to finish the high school she had dropped out of when she met Carlos. She worked part-time at a local bakery, discovering a passion for baking bread and cakes that she had never had the opportunity to explore. The children attended therapy regularly, and although they still had occasional nightmares, little by little, they were healing the invisible wounds that years of violence had left on their souls. "Mom, the doorbell!" Juanito shouted from the living room. Rosa wiped her hands on her apron and went to open the door. Standing there was Gabriela, Juanito's teacher, with a gift in her hands. "I couldn't miss this celebration," smiled the teacher, hugging Rosa. 6 months of freedom deserve a cake, and we have one," replied Rosa, inviting her in. "I made it myself, without anyone's criticism or corrections." The small living room was soon filled with people. Relatives Rosa had rediscovered, new friends from the support group for abused women, co-workers from the bakery. All of them saw in her not the quiet, obedient shadow she had been for 8 years, but the strong, resilient woman she was becoming. When it was time to blow out the candles on that peculiar birthday of freedom, Letitia asked for a moment of attention. "I want to propose a toast," she said, raising her glass of lemonade. "To Rosa, who taught us that it's never too late to reclaim your life. To Juanito and Lupita, who will have the opportunity to grow up understanding that true love does not hurt or humiliate. And to all the women who are still trapped, waiting for that ray of hope that will give them the strength to take the first step toward freedom." Rosa looked around at her new life built on the ashes of her old one and felt something she had forgotten how to feel: happiness. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't complete, and there was still a long way to go. The scars, both physical and emotional, would take years to fade completely, if they ever did. But as she watched her children laugh without fear, as she felt her sister's protective embrace, as she received the sincere smiles of her new friends, Rosa knew with certainty that she had made the right decision that Sunday, when she finally decided to break the silence. "To freedom," she said simply, raising her glass as well. "Here's to new beginnings." Outside, the sun of San Antonio shone brightly, illuminating an uncertain future, but one full of possibilities. A future in which Rosa and her children could finally breathe without fear, dream without limits, and live without invisible chains binding their souls. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to explore more content on our channel. We have many more exciting and thought-provoking stories like this one that seek to inspire you and show you that there is always hope. Click on the following video and join us for another story that is sure to captivate you from the very beginning. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your comments, and share this video with those you think need it. Thank you for being part of this community. See you next time.